I still remember that spine-chilling camping trip back in middle school, and it still haunts my nightmares. My parents, thinking they were doing me a favor, made me join the Wildwood Scouts for a week-long adventure at a forsaken cabin deep in the sinister woods. From the get-go, I couldn't stand the ragtag bunch of kids I was forced to share this ghastly experience with. The day of our departure, my parents dropped me off in the eerie school parking lot where ominous clouds gathered, casting a foreboding shadow over the day. I couldn't muster a word to anyone. I knew a torturous week awaited. As we reached the camp, it was as if we had stumbled upon a haunted land. Long, winding dirt roads led us further into the heart of the menacing forest, past eerie wooden structures, and through desolate grassy fields. Finally, we arrived at our cabin, a dilapidated structure with only 3 rooms, a grimy kitchen, a decrepit dining area, and a nightmarish room with creaky bunk beds. There would be no privacy here, not even for our darkest dreams. As the sun descended into the abyss, our eerie scout leader gathered us in the dread-filled bunk room. We huddled on our eerie bunks as he revealed a horrifying rule: if we dared to visit the restrooms during the night, we needed a partner to join us through the pitch-black woods. The restroom was located at the bottom of a sinister hill, a treacherous journey for the brave-hearted. My fate took a chilling turn when I was forced to share my bunk bed with a boy named Damien, who embodied pure dread. The first night was a waking nightmare. The cabin's supposed air conditioning felt more like a sinister specter blowing hot breath down my neck. Damien and his eerie friend played some eerie game on a forbidden phone, their unsettling giggles echoing in the room. Hours dragged on, and finally, Damien's friend departed. But Damien, not known for following rules, decided to adhere to protocol for the first time. He woke me, and I reluctantly followed him outside into the menacing night. The room was filled with haunting snores, and the air held a malevolent warmth. Being outside was a reprieve from the cabin's sinister aura. After we relieved ourselves, we trudged back up the dread-filled hill. But then, Damien signaled for silence, placing a finger to his ghastly lips. I froze, listening intently. Faint, sinister whispers and the murmur of a menacing man reached our ears through the eerie ventilation window. Panic set in, but Damien, ever the curious fool, approached the restroom door and pounded on it relentlessly. Seconds felt like an eternity as the door creaked open, revealing a malevolent figure in a tattered white t-shirt and eerie jeans. With a sinister pull, he dragged Damien inside, sealing their grim fate. I couldn't believe my terror-stricken eyes and bolted up the sinister hill, sprinting toward our scout leader. In the darkness of the cursed cabin, I frantically searched for him, shouting his name, uncaring about waking the others. He emerged from the shadows, accompanied by another cloaked figure. I led him back to the restroom, trembling with fear. They knocked on the menacing door, and it slowly swung open, revealing the same menacing man. The scout leader and the eerie companion stormed inside, sealing the grotesque scene from my view. I stood alone in the inky blackness for what felt like hours, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, another scout from our group rushed out of the restroom, his ghastly face filled with terror. He motioned for me to follow him back to the cursed cabin. Soon after, the police arrived, their flashing lights revealing a scene straight out of a horror movie. The police conducted a sinister headcount, ensuring everyone was present, especially Matthew, Jack, and their bunkmate. The eerie silence left me with a nauseating sense of dread. No one spoke of the sinister incident, and the details remained shrouded in darkness. It was only later, safe at home, that my parents revealed the chilling truth. A malevolent man from the cursed woods had infiltrated our camp that night, lurking in the sinister restroom, with unspeakable intentions. The scoutmaster had acted heroically, stopping the malevolent intruder before his sinister plans could manifest. But Matthew, Jack, and their bunkmate were forever lost to the shadows. That camping trip marked the end of my scouting days, and I never crossed paths with Damien again. My parents, haunted by the sinister encounter, withdrew me from the cursed Wildwood Scouts. The chilling reality that it could have been me, ensnared by that malevolent presence, still haunts my nightmares to this day. Ever since I can remember, I've had an unshakable fascination with nature. As a kid, I'd often spend endless summer days hiking through the dense woods with my dad and school friends. The allure of the wilderness was irresistible. But little did I know that one fateful encounter would change the way I viewed those very woods forever. I had plans to try out for the soccer team in the fall to keep fit and enjoy the natural beauty around me. To prepare, I started jogging through the woods. One day, as I ventured down a new, unfamiliar trail, I stumbled upon something that sent shivers down my spine, an eerie cabin, tucked away in the deepest, most isolated part of the woods, far from any road. The cabin was nothing like the cozy, welcoming abodes you'd expect to find in the woods. It was small, old-fashioned, and downright decrepit. The tin roof had seen better days, and the wooden walls were worn and weathered. Windows were boarded up as if to keep something inside hidden from prying eyes, and the place seemed like it hadn't seen a human soul in years. My curiosity piqued. I couldn't resist the urge to explore it, but my jog had to come to an end. I reluctantly left the cabin behind and headed home. Once there, I called my adventurous friend Aaron, eager to share my discovery. Aaron and I decided to meet up at the park later that day, as darkness began to cast eerie shadows over the woods. With the clock striking 7, we delved deep into the woods, following the winding trail. The cabin was only a mile away, and it didn't take us long to reach it. Standing before that eerie cabin, Aaron's surprise mirrored my own. We circled it, searching for any way to enter. The front door was locked tight, but our keen eyes spotted a loose board covering a window in the backyard. That would be our entry point. Aaron squeezed through the window first, and I followed, hesitating but driven by curiosity. Inside, the atmosphere was stifling, heavy, and thick with a damp, musty scent that made it difficult to breathe. We began our exploration, peering into each room and dark corner. The cabin's interior was bleak and barren, with only a few pieces of old, weathered furniture scattered about. The fireplace sat dusty and unused. Our footsteps echoed through the silence as we moved around the cabin. Intriguingly, we stumbled upon a peculiar door hidden behind a dusty bookshelf, seemingly the main bedroom. Our curiosity got the best of us as Aaron swung the door open, revealing a walk-in closet. Wooden coat hangers dangled from a bar, but there was something horribly amiss: no clothes. Suddenly, Aaron let out a blood-curdling scream right beside me, sending my heart pounding against my chest. He swatted frantically at his head, convinced that a spider or something had landed on him. When I aimed the flashlight toward him, I saw it wasn't a spider, but a web, hanging ominously above us. Our adventurous spirits pushed us to take it down and climb up the ladder to explore what lay above. I ascended first, my heart racing. What I saw when I reached the top sent chills down my spine: a circle, about the size of a hula hoop, formed by several bones arranged neatly side by side. I urged Aaron to join me, and he climbed up the ladder, taking the flashlight from my trembling hands. Crouching down to get a closer look, his face turned ashen, eyes wide with shock. He whispered, "Dude, these are human bones." Without hesitation, we descended the ladder and fled from the cabin as though the devil himself were chasing us. We didn't stop until we reached my house, where we confided in my parents and immediately called the police. The investigation that ensued uncovered a horrifying truth: the bones we found were indeed human, some dating back years, others mere months. A serial killer was lurking in the area, but the police had no leads, no suspects. The woods that had once been our playground were now tainted by the malevolent presence of a murderer. From that day forward, I vowed never to tread that sinister trail again, and I avoided those woods unless accompanied by a friend. To this day, the malevolent presence remains at large, and the darkness of that discovery still haunts my dreams. A few years ago, my grandpa passed away, leaving me his eerie cabin that he built back in the sinister 80s. It stood alone, hidden deep within the haunting woods, where ominous shadows danced, and the trees whispered secrets. My grandparents would visit occasionally for short, unsettling trips, but they never stayed long. When I found out I inherited the cabin, I felt a chilling mix of emotions, happiness and sadness tangled like a spider's web. Those woods held memories of my grandparents taking care of me while my parents were away on sinister work trips. I always yearned to join them at the cabin, but it never happened. The cabin was locked away in the forest, waiting for me to unearth its chilling secrets. I was attending college in another bone-chilling state when the cabin came into my possession. It was the start of my first spine-tingling semester, so I had to wait until the following spring to move in. The cabin stood in a desolate, pitch-black landscape, and the night I returned was as dark as a tomb. The lawn had grown wild, ominous branches hung low, and sinister weeds had claimed the driveway. As I unpacked my few bags, I felt the chilling presence of the cabin's history looming over me. It was like taking a terrifying trip down memory lane, and I was grateful yet filled with dread because this cabin would become my first real home. With the cabin swallowed by the ominous woods, I began making plans to breathe life back into it. I spent the evening unpacking and dusting, the air thick with age and secrets. When I entered the room where I used to sleep, I couldn't believe my eyes. My childhood treasures, the race cars, toys, and board games, all remained, frozen in time, as if the past refused to let go. I sat there, lost in spine-chilling memories, until I shook myself free and returned to the present. Exhausted from the unsettling day, I ventured outside to the porch, a creaking structure that encircled half the cabin. The eerie moonlight barely penetrated the dense forest, shrouding everything in darkness. My grandpa and I used to kayak on the small, eerie lake he'd constructed a dock for. I stared out at the ominous lake, wondering what mysteries it held. Suddenly, a spine-tingling sight made my blood run cold. A figure emerged from the depths of the forest, creeping toward the sinister dock. Bewildered and fearful, I watched as they reached the dock and sat down, oblivious to my presence. I convinced myself it was just a neighbor taking a sinister midnight stroll or a lone, eerie fisherman. To avoid a chilling encounter, I decided to retreat inside and extinguish the eerie cabin's lights. I glanced out after a few minutes, expecting them to have vanished, but they had disappeared into the abyss of the night. Realizing I had forgotten curtains for the windows, I searched the eerie cabin for anything to block the eerie moonlight. After a frantic search, I settled on using a blanket. As I entered my grandparents' room for a suitable one, I noticed something peculiar, strange, unsettling wrinkles on the bed. Only my grandparents had used that bed recently. I brushed off the unease and attempted to get some much-needed rest. But sleep did not come easily. In the dead of night, a terrifying noise shattered the eerie silence. I bolted upright, panic clawing at me. I armed myself with my grandpa's shotgun and cautiously ventured towards the sinister sound. I turned on lights to investigate, but nothing seemed out of place. As I headed outside, I encountered a sinister, gaping hole in the porch, large enough to swallow a human. Fear gripped me as I peered into the darkness below. My flashlight revealed a chilling sight, a sodden, mud-covered black boot. Panic engulfed me as I realized someone had been lurking beneath the sinister cabin. The boot, missing a shoestring, had fallen through the rotted wood. I clutched the shotgun, feeling my heart race as I retreated inside, locked the door, and called the sinister authorities. I remained vigilant by the window, the darkness outside concealing all. Just when I thought I was safe, a bone-chilling sight froze my blood, another glimpse of the eerie figure, this time near the sinister dock. I grabbed the shotgun, loaded it, and watched intently, praying for the sinister authorities to arrive. But the figure vanished into the sinister night, and I never saw them again. The authorities searched the cabin and surrounding area but took no action, as the sinister trespasser had disappeared. I could never ascertain their sinister intentions that eerie night, and I shuddered at the thought of what might have occurred had the porch not given way. I returned to my parents' house, never setting foot in that sinister cabin again. Dark suspicions lingered about whether someone had sinister access to the cabin, possibly explaining the eerie bed sheets in my grandparents' room. I hoped it was all in my sinister imagination, but the fear of an eerie presence in that secluded cabin in the sinister woods still haunts me to this day. I may own the cabin, but I won't return until I can afford a sinister security system to unmask the sinister secrets lurking in the shadows. In the eerie summer of 2020, my buddies Jake and Lily and I ventured into the heart of the ominous mountains, seeking refuge from the oppressive grip of cabin fever. Desperation led us to a remote, mountainous state, where our plan was to camp and hike across various locations. However, we had a peculiar twist in mind for our first night, dropping acid in a cabin tucked deep within the ominous woods. Lily had come prepared, carrying a whole sheet of the mind-bending substance in her bag. Yet, as we departed our driveway, an inexplicable dread clawed at my stomach, an instinctual warning. I told Jake and Lily that it just wasn't right, that we couldn't drop acid that night. Violet was furious, and our argument escalated into a tempestuous whirlwind. But I held my ground, feeling that something sinister loomed. As darkness descended, we found ourselves perched atop a desolate mountain, our cabin an isolated sentinel. A deep sense of foreboding settled upon us, as we gathered around a flickering fire to ward off the encroaching night. Amid the oppressive silence, the sound of an engine reverberated through the mountain air, followed by the piercing glare of headlights. A side-by-side vehicle with 3 mysterious figures arrived, temporarily quelling our nerves with their friendly wave before ascending the nearby fire tower. We had heard rumors of occasional visitors to the tower, but they were the sole ones to cross our path. Later that night, we heard unsettling sounds in the background, a twig snapping, the distant rumble of an engine. We all sensed it but chose to remain silent, fearing the unknown. Then, the night took a malevolent turn. A human hand suddenly shot up, pounding on our cabin window 3 times, shattering our tranquility. In an instant, we were screaming. Jake dialed 911, speakerphone in hand, while I clutched the poker from the fireplace, passing them out in a frenzy. Lily frantically reached out to family members, uttering her last goodbyes. All the while, we strained to hear any more sounds, hoping that the intruder had retreated. The police arrived after a grueling 20 minutes. They combed the mountain with their dogs but found no trace of our enigmatic visitor. Their explanation was a feeble one, suggesting it might have been a bear. But their expressions betrayed disbelief, and we knew they didn't buy that theory for a second. Why would a bear target our window instead of the pan of hot dogs? Why knock like a human and retreat upon hearing our screams? They left us with one haunting detail, the sight of a car at the base of the mountain, the only sign of life they had encountered. My blood ran cold as I realized the implications. There was nothing else on that mountain, a narrow road leading to the cabin, no other campsites or pull-offs. Someone had deliberately hiked up to our cabin, wanting silence and secrecy. The disturbing handprints on Lily's car, placed where they shouldn't have been, left us with chilling questions. We left the mountain behind, seeking refuge in a dingy motel. The unsettling realization remained: our visitor had orchestrated a sinister plan, and I would never know what they truly wanted. Their motives, whether a twisted prank or the beginning of something far more sinister, remained concealed in the shadows. Our quick thinking had spared us from a potentially terrifying fate, but the enigma of that night would forever haunt our memories. "2 years ago, I found myself in a nightmare far from home. It was my first time living away from the familiar comfort of my parents' house, and I was stationed at a remote kids' activity camp deep in the woods. Our lives revolved around 2 massive cabins where all the staff lived, with nearly 40 people crammed into each one. In those tight quarters, we quickly grew close, sharing stories and laughter, and forging a unique bond. It was a place where locking doors seemed unnecessary, as we all trusted each other implicitly. We freely roamed between friends' rooms, and it felt like a true community. But that sense of safety was about to be shattered. My job at the camp had me working with the kids during the day and taking evening shifts at the staff bar, where fellow counselors and the parents would unwind. One fateful night, my roommate, Debs, and I were both assigned bar duty. She was on a shift that ended a couple of hours earlier than mine, and we had planned to return to our cabin to watch a movie. Debs left for our cabin, a mere 5-minute walk from the bar. Just as I was settling into my shift, my phone began to ring with her caller ID flashing on the screen. I answered, expecting her to say something, but all I heard was eerie silence. Assuming it was a butt dial, I hung up. But then, the inexplicable happened. A call from a friend living across the hallway urgently beckoned me back to our room. I asked a colleague to cover for me and hastily made my way down the dimly lit hallway. My heart pounded as I approached our room and found a group of 5 people gathered outside. I pushed open the door, and there stood Debs, tears streaming down her face. Debs was not one to cry easily, which instantly sent shivers down my spine. Our room was a scene of chaos, our belongings were scattered haphazardly, and this was strange because I had a habit of tidying up, even on her side of the room, much to her annoyance. Debs then told me the horrifying truth: her phone had vanished. Bewildered, I asked her about the calls she made to me earlier, but she had no recollection of making them. This meant that whoever took her phone knew exactly who to call, and that was a chilling thought. What made it even more baffling was the phone's worthlessness. It was just an old, basic model. In the days that followed, more peculiar occurrences unfolded. We noticed that items had gone missing, but they were not valuable items like laptops or electronics. Instead, the thief had taken my underwear, some clean, some from the dirty laundry. The mere thought of it made me sick to my stomach. What kind of pervert could do such a thing? We reported these bizarre events to our camp bosses, who, to our dismay, indirectly blamed us for leaving our door unlocked. In hindsight, it was a foolish mistake, but the eerie events that followed were beyond our control. A few days later, I walked into the staff lounge, and there, placed ominously on the windowsill, was Deb's phone. The room was empty, and there was no one in sight. Panic surged through me, and I quickly retreated, locking myself in our room until Debs returned. To this day, we never discovered the identity of the perpetrator who stole my underwear, took Deb's phone, and ransacked our room. The unsettling feeling lingers, haunting my memories. It seemed as though the culprit was someone who knew us well, who knew when we would be absent, and who reveled in the torment they had caused. The lesson was clear: never underestimate the darkness that may lurk even in the most seemingly secure places. Lock your doors and be vigilant, for there are sinister, lurking forces that prey on the unsuspecting. I couldn't contain my excitement, and we finally arrived at my parents' cabin for our long-awaited summer trip. Nestled near a sinister, dark lake, the cabin seemed to creak with secrets, and the ominous woods surrounding us held an air of foreboding. Other cabins stood like solitary sentinels in the distance, but it was just my parents, me, and the ever-present specter of the woods and that sinister lake. With the anticipation of fishing, exploring, and relaxation bubbling within us, we hurried to settle into the cabin, eager to make the most of our time here. But as we unpacked our fishing gear, a growing unease took root in my chest. A shiver ran down my spine as an eerie quiet descended upon us. It felt like the woods were watching, waiting for something. As we discussed our plans, that sinister sensation turned into sheer dread. I was the first to hear it: the muffled, cautious footsteps outside, an unsettling attempt at stealth. Panic surged through me, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from the slightly open window. In that bone-chilling moment, a nightmarish hand, with fingers like crooked talons, slithered through the window, reaching for my unsuspecting friend. Our shrill, horrified screams rent the air, but the grip of that grotesque hand only tightened on my friend's arm. I watched in helpless terror as it loomed menacingly before vanishing into the shadows, leaving behind a void of darkness and the echoes of our fear. My parents rushed to our side, but confusion and disbelief clouded their faces. I tried to explain, my voice trembling with fear, but my father dismissed it as childish imagination. How could they not see the bone-chilling reality of what we had experienced? Even if it were a figment of our imagination, it felt maddeningly, horrifically real. That night, we lay awake, the cabin's shadows twisting into menacing shapes, unable to shake the feeling that something malevolent lurked just beyond the windowpane. In an attempt to banish our lingering dread, we sought refuge in the calming embrace of the lake, fishing and hiking to distract our minds. But that sinister encounter continued to haunt us, casting a pall over the rest of our trip. As the time came for us to leave the cabin behind, relief washed over us. But the memory of that nightmarish hand clung to our thoughts, refusing to fade. To this day, we remain haunted by questions that have no answers. Who, or what, was behind that nightmarish hand, and what did they want from us? In the scorching summer of 2013, my parents made a spine-chilling decision. They rented a secluded cabin for a family vacation. I was just a terrified 16-year-old, and my beloved 10-year-old brother tagged along. To add an extra layer of dread, our loyal canine companion, Max, joined us. Max always seemed to sense danger, and I could never have imagined just how much he'd need to protect us. During the day, as the merciless sun bore down on us, my brother and I tried to distract ourselves from the mounting tension by playing games and exploring the ominous woods surrounding the cabin. We clung to each other, our nerves on edge. But when night fell, the cabin transformed into something out of a nightmare. Our temporary refuge was a decaying, old-fashioned cabin, far removed from the comforting hum of the city. It was a place where darkness held a malevolent sway over our senses. As we prepared to sleep in our sinister surroundings, an uninvited guest barged into our room. The door flung open, and the lights burst to life, casting eerie shadows across the walls. We were paralyzed by shock, our breath caught in our throats. Our dad entered, his face etched with anxiety. He asked, in a trembling voice, "Did you hear someone talking?" I replied, my voice quivering, "No, I didn't hear anything." "Why?" But my dad only mumbled incomprehensibly before abruptly leaving the room. We were left in the suffocating silence, our dread growing with every passing second. Around 4 a.m., I awoke to a sound that sent shivers down my spine, a faint, unearthly voice, wafting through the inky darkness from outside our window. My heart pounded as fear coiled around me. Slowly, I inched towards the window, pulling the curtain aside with agonizing caution. What I saw made my blood run cold. An elderly man, his features twisted in a grotesque smile, stood there, his gaze fixed squarely upon us. He whispered, almost inaudibly, "Hey, little boy, I know you're in there. Come outside." Terror surged through me, but I couldn't let my little brother face this nightmare alone. Max, our loyal sentinel, sensed the evil lurking outside and erupted into frenzied barking. Trembling, I knew I had to take a stand. I reached under the bed and grasped my dad's gun, clutching it with white-knuckled determination. I warned the intruder, my voice trembling but resolute, "Leave us alone, or I'll shoot you." The man continued to stare at us through the window, his eyes filled with a chilling intensity. Just when the unbearable tension threatened to consume us, my dad came charging up the stairs. He told us he had called the police, and the intruder realized he was running out of time. He fled into the foreboding darkness, vanishing like a phantom. The police later revealed that the intruder was a deranged homeless man, tormented by his own malevolent thoughts. My love for hiking remained, but it would forever be tainted by the memory of that night, a night when the woods seemed to hold secrets far more terrifying than we could ever have imagined.